the early 1600s, at the edge of a vast and unknown continent, an island waited in silence. Winds swept across its forests. Tides whispered against its shores. No skyline, no empire, just land, water, and destiny preparing to arrive. Europe was expanding. Empires searched for trade, power, and passage. Across the Atlantic, this quiet island lay directly in the path of ambition. In 1609, an English explorer sailing for the Dutch, Henry Hudson, entered the great river that would later bear his name. Hudson's crew stepped onto a wooded tidal shore alive with Lenape trade routes. For the native people, this land was home. For Europe, it was opportunity. In 1626, Dutch officials secured Manhattan from the Lenape in an exchange later valued at 60 guilders worth of trade goods. The agreement was practical and deeply misunderstood across cultures. Yet it gave the Dutch a foothold they quickly fortified. Settlers felled thick Manhattan forests with hand axes, dragging heavy logs through mud to raise homes, palisades, and warehouses. Wood smoke, sweat, and the crack of splitting timber filled the air. The colony carved itself from wilderness, one beam, one plank, one hard-earned day at a time. By 1626, Fort Amsterdam rose at the southern tip of Manhattan, a rough palisade of earth and timber guarding the young colony. From its ramparts, soldiers watched shifting tides, company warehouses, and the fragile beginnings of New Amsterdam. It was both shield and statement, a foothold meant to last. In 1644, Dutch leaders and native nations forged fragile treaties meant to quiet years of violence. Around council fires, envoys traded wampum, promises, and uneasy concessions. The peace was brief but allowed the colony to rebuild. By the 1650s, enslaved Africans were brought to New Amsterdam in growing numbers. Their forced labor became woven into the colony's docks, farms, and households. Bondage was a harsh reality shaping the city's early economy. Inside a New Amsterdam home, life unfolded in a single crowded room warmed by a brick hearth. Light filtered through small leaded windows, falling on rough tables, wool blankets, and pewter dishes. Every task, from cooking to tending livestock, followed the steady rhythm of survival in a fragile settlement. In 1664, English warships appeared in the harbor, their cannons trained on Fort Amsterdam. Outnumbered and divided, New Amsterdam offered little resistance. With a quiet surrender, the city passed into English hands and was renamed New York, its future redirected without a single shot fired. By 1667, the Treaty of Breda formally ended Dutch hopes of reclaiming the colony. New York was now English territory, its laws, loyalties, and future permanently aligned with a distant empire. In 1673, Dutch ships returned and seized the city, renaming it New Orange. For a single restless year, the old banners flew once more, before diplomacy restored English control. By 1674, diplomacy returned the colony to English control. New Orange became New York once again, and the city entered a period of stability under its new rulers. By 1679, the old Dutch Stadhuis served as New York's city hall. Merchants, magistrates, and clerks moved through its cramped rooms, recording the business of a growing port. The building was a reminder of the city's Dutch past, still central under English rule. By 1680, New York's population topped 4,000. Brick houses rose along streets, English and Dutch architectural styles blending. The port bustled with trade, a small city becoming a vital link in the Atlantic world. The enslaved population increased sharply, their labor essential to docks, homes, and farms. Daily life for many was harsh, yet they shaped the rhythms of this growing colonial city. By 1679, New York's great dock stretched into the East River. Merchants, sailors, and laborers crowded its planks, unloading goods from across the Atlantic. The dock signaled the city's ambitions, a growing gateway to the world. Despite English rule, Dutch influence endured in streets, homes, and customs. Steep gables, brick facades, and timber beams spoke of a past still alive in the city's architecture. The old defensive wall still marked the northern edge of the settlement, the line that would become Wall Street. Timber ramparts aged but intact, guarding a city balancing history and expansion. In 1689, the citizen militia mustered on the commons amid unrest after the Glorious Revolution. Merchants, artisans, and laborers drilled in a mix of Dutch, English, and colonial-born men, caught in shifting loyalties. The rebellion was brief, but it revealed the city's tensions under changing rule. News from England reached New York of kings rising and falling, leaving the colony unsure whose authority truly ruled. Merchants debated in taverns, soldiers drilled on the commons, and ordinary residents watched the harbor for orders or upheaval. By 1690, Pearl Street had become one of New York's busiest lanes. Traders, craftsmen, and sailors crowded its wooden shops. The scent of tar, spices, and river winds reminded residents how closely life and commerce were tied to the water. Inside homes, life remained modest but structured. Families rose early, cooked over brick hearths, mended clothes, and prepared food for winter. Children helped wherever they could, learning survival in a growing city. The port remained the heart of New York's growth. Ships arrived from across the Atlantic, bringing goods, news, and new settlers. The city was a small but vital link in global trade networks. Despite English governance, Dutch culture persisted in language, trade, and architecture. New York's streets reflected a city balancing old traditions with new authority. City leaders and local militias worked to enforce law and order. The colony's growth brought new challenges, from theft to disputes over trade and property. Ships continued to pour into the harbor, carrying furs, timber, sugar, and tobacco. The river connected New York to a global economy, shaping its ambitions and identity. Life on New York's streets blended commerce, labor, and domestic routine. Traders called to customers, craftsmen hammered and sawed, and children ran through alleys, learning the city's rhythms. By 1699, Pearl Street remained one of New York's busiest lanes. Traders, sailors, and craftsmen flowed through its shops, a reminder of the city's enduring connection to the river that sustained it. At the dawn of the 18th century, New York continued to grow. New brick homes replaced timber frames, streets extended, and the city's population diversified. English, Dutch, African, and indigenous cultures intertwined in everyday life. At the northern edge of the settlement, the Watergate controlled river access. Goods, travelers, and news passed through this modest fortified passage, a reminder of the city's defensive past. In homes and taverns, life was modest yet communal. Families shared meals, craftsmen worked side by side, and stories were told by candlelight, binding the city's growing population together. The docks remained the heartbeat of the city. Ships arrived from Europe, the Caribbean, and Africa, carrying goods that fueled commerce and shaped New York's economy. Militias and city officials worked to maintain order. As the population grew, disputes over trade, property, and loyalty became more common, requiring vigilance and authority. New York's streets reflected a city blending old Dutch ways with English governance. Language, trade, architecture, and social customs intertwined, shaping a unique colonial identity. For most residents, daily life revolved around labor and survival. Families worked together, children learned trades, and every task contributed to the city's fragile prosperity. New York's harbor connected the city to the wider world. Goods, news, and people flowed constantly, making the river a lifeline and symbol of ambition. Streets and markets thrived with activity. Merchants, artisans, sailors, and residents moved in a constant rhythm. The city alive with the pulse of commerce and daily life. By 1740, New York had become a thriving colonial port. Its streets, docks, and homes reflected decades of change, ambition, and resilience. A city forged between rivers, empires, and people, poised for the centuries ahead.